As Canada creeps closer towards recession, good news is hard to find. Fort McMurray, Alberta is a town that's known its share of economic downturns. But boy, has it had some booms. All because of one commodity, oil. The Alberta tar sands produce about 1.2 million barrels of oil a day, with a capacity for much more. So as oil prices go, so goes the economy here, which is why the city hasn't been immune from the bad news that's been spreading around the world. But Murray Jordan's job is all about good news. Every morning he gets Fort McMurray going at Chaos 91.1, a radio station operated by the Christian ministry King's Kids Outreach Promotion.
Fort McMurray's new music alternative, Chaos 91.1, that is Mark Schultz. And walking her home, good morning, Murray Jordan with you.
Their playlist is positive. Their motto, to expose hope through music, talk, and action. Something that goes beyond the airwaves. For the last 20 years, Jordan has called Fort McMurray home. And today, he's my tour guide.
So Murray from Fort McMurray, do you get a lot of jokes about that?
I do. I get that joke all the time.
Right. So you really belong in this place,
I do. Murray from Fort McMurray. That's.
And the first thing to see is what this community was built on, the oil sands, even though they are at least a half-hour drive away. That is, without traffic. There's only one road out of town, and with hundreds of buses and trucks making the journey there and back every day, it can be a nightmare.
It was about 28,000 people when I moved here, and I think last year at the last census, we just passed over 84,000. So that's a pretty quick growth in 20 years.
And the road hasn't been easy. There have been a few booms and busts in between.
Really didn't pick back up again until oil prices changed and turned the corner in the late 90s, about 96, 97, when oil prices went back up above the $20 a barrel mark. And since that time, it's just been nonstop.
Keeping up hasn't been easy, especially on infrastructure. Fort McMurray is an ongoing construction site. Homes are hard to come by here, which is why the real estate prices have gone through the roof. Even rentals are difficult to find and expensive. Average rents run at $2,190 a month, and for a two-bedroom unit, $2,360 a month. But the high cost of living is offset by the promise of high wages, and that's what draws people across the country to find their fortune here.
It used to be a lot more transient than it is. There used to be the people would come and they'd be here for their McMurray 5-year plan, you know, and they would come and make their money and leave. Well, now it's to the point where people are staying. When I first moved here, you didn't see gray-haired people. And this road that we're just going to take...
Jordan is one of those people who decided to stay. Though he's not likely to make his fortune in radio, his job brings him great satisfaction.
The focus that we launched with was to bring... well, one of our slogans is exposing hope through music, talk, and action. And we wanted to be a light in the darkness.
And there is a dark side to the oil sands. Apart from the environmental criticism launched by some, there is a human tragedy lurking beneath the surface.
In Fort McMurray, everything is big, including this bucket used to mine the oil sands. You could fit 2 cars in here. And it gives you a kind of idea of the scope of money that's to be made. But many who come here are not so fortunate. And that's where Fort McMurray's other precious resource comes in. A church community committed to working together to help those left behind the boom.
People like Benedict. He moved from Toronto to Fort McMurray in search of a job and instead found himself unemployed and living in a homeless shelter.
Currently I'm staying at the Salvation Army, and for lunch I come here, and I feel so grateful that this place exists here, because otherwise I wouldn't have anything to eat.
So every day he makes his way to Fellowship Baptist Church, which runs the soup kitchen.
was thinking of coming.
Pastor Brent Carter said he never expected to find so many homeless when he moved to Fort McMurray 3 years ago.
We have a higher percentage of homeless in Fort McMurray than any other major city in Alberta, probably any other major city in Canada per capita.
And the homeless include those with addictions, the working poor, and increasingly young people.
So a lot of young people in particular make their way to Fort McMurray thinking that there's a job waiting, there's housing waiting, and they find to their surprise and disappointment that that's not the case, that you have to be highly qualified for most jobs and that housing is at a premium.
With the average 3-bedroom bungalow house selling between $650,000 to $700,000, a job doesn't necessarily pave the way toward a home. But Benedict did end up finding a job. He'll be working for one of the largest producers of crude oil in the tar sands, though as a janitor, not an oil worker.
It's hard to get a place around here, you know, it's very expensive, rent is very, very expensive. There are a lot of jobs, but just rent is, you know, you can't find accommodation. That is a problem.
And so he's relying on the kindness of strangers for now. And with the economic downturn, Pastor Brent Carter says it's not likely the need will change anytime soon.
Our ministry to the homeless is probably one of the most challenging things I've ever been involved in. It's somewhat relentless, and it takes as many resources as you can give it.
Tomorrow on 100 Huntley Street, in a town saturated with resources, literally, one comes to the surface to meet the challenging road ahead.
I do not believe that God is okay with our community not housing our homeless people.